Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the licensing panel relating to Sainsbury Supermarket Limited. My name is Councillor Steve Donnelly. I shall be chairing the meeting with my colleagues, Councillor Anthony Kelly and Councillor Nigel Sumner, and we comprise today's subcommittee. Misha Jalil, who is clerk to the subcommittee, will be minuting the meeting. Hatun Zed is advisor to the subcommittee, and Angela, legal licensing processing team leader, will introduce the report. In accordance with the procedure, I will invite the licensing officer to introduce the report and provide clarification on any factual issues. I'll invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. I'll then invite those who made representations or objections to make their representations, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the Democratic Services Officer, will retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing within 5 working days. If the panel cannot reach a decision today, you will be notified in writing within 5 working days of the decision. I think everybody here is experienced in these matters, so I'm sure none of those things came as a surprise. So welcome to everybody to the meeting. I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves so that we know who each other are. So perhaps if I can perhaps ask the applicant side to introduce themselves first.
Good morning. My name is Robert Botkai, solicitor from Winkworth Sherwood. I'm representing Sainsbury's today. To make it easier, if I can introduce Joanne Sergai. Joe, if you could wave. Joe is the licensing manager for Sainsbury's nationally, and Tom Holland. Tom is the acquisition surveyor for Sainsbury's. So if you've got questions about licensing, about the way that the store deals with the licensing objectives and its responsibilities, then Joe will be able to help. If it's more a question about why here, then Tom. Now I've also got Sarah Grant, who is a trainee solicitor with my firm, and Andrew Sanders, who's a senior licensing officer, but neither is expected to join in unless I fall off my chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I very much hope, I mean, in this virtual world, all sorts of strange things happen, Mr. Buckeye, but I very much hope that doesn't happen to you. We don't want to go viral for those sorts of reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Can I ask, Angela, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Angela Garcher. I'm the team leader for the licensing processing team for Ealing Council.
And we have PC Smart from the police, I can see. Kerry, you're on mute.
Very smart, you're on mute.
Perhaps she's wandered away from her device briefly.
Oh, I see.
No, oh no. Kerry, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I just lost my internet then. But PC Kerry Smart, Police Licensing Officer for the Met.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think I've introduced everybody.
Well, you could try introducing me.
Oh, Carolyn. I beg your pardon, Carolyn. I've just got to your name. Carolyn, please introduce yourselves. We know you, but others here don't.
Yeah, it's Carolyn Brown, and I'm chair of Hamwell Community Forum. And Hamwell Community Forum is an organisation with about 1,300 named members on the list, and we represent residents' associations and community groups, and sometimes businesses in Hamwell. Hamwell as opposed to Elthorne. Elthorne Town Centre doesn't actually exist.
Thank you very much. It's a local government construct.
It certainly is a construct, but
yes.
It somehow got into the case officer's report.
Yeah,
much to some people.
Well, thank you very much to everybody for attending today. as I say, I think everybody here knows the score of these kinds of meetings, so I'm sure we'll have a very constructive and productive day. So I'll start by asking the licensing officer to introduce the application. Anjali?
Yes. So this is an application that's been made by Sainsbury's Supermarkets Limited, and they've applied for a new premises licence for Sainsbury's located at 144 to 156 Uxbridge Road, Hanwell, W73SL. And the application proposes the following: supply of alcohol off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 6 a.m. to midnight, and hours is premises open to the public will be Monday to Sunday, 24 hours. The application attracted a representation from an interested party, namely Ms. Caroline Brown, who is also part of the community forum. This remains unresolved. The Metropolitan Police also made a representation to the application. This is due to the premises being located within the special policy area and the hours being outside of core hours. Negotiations did take place between the applicant and the Metropolitan Police. However, they are not in an agreed position and the representation therefore still stands. The premises is a supermarket located on the Uxbridge Road between the clock tower and the viaduct on the main road within the town centre. If I can assist you any further. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to Anjali from the panel? No, thank you. In that case, we can proceed to invite the applicant to present the application. Mr. Bokhai.
Thank you. Can I just check that I'm not restricted to, I'm not going to talk for very long, but is there an actual time limit on?
No, but I mean, I may clearly, the more you say now, the less I will hope that you say when you come to sum up, if I can put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got a hearing next week where I'm limited to 3 minutes, which is extremely difficult for any lawyer to limit themselves to 3 minutes. So.
Well, and difficult for politicians too.
Yes,
but I say we're much keener to come to the right decision than to a speedy one.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right way. Thank you very much, and good morning again. So this is an application by Sainsbury's, who would like to open a new store in Hanwell. You've seen the map. You've seen where we are to be located. We have been fully aware throughout of the special policy that applies to Elthorne, and the application that we put in is not what I would call a Sainsbury's standard application. We looked carefully at the policy and the sorts of conditions that you would expect to see and the reasons behind the policy, which are principally about street drinking around the clock tower area, and we've adapted our application accordingly. We did try to consult with the police in advance of submitting the application. I think Kerry would agree. I think there was a breakdown somehow in an email box, that emails didn't get through. So no criticism of Kerry at all there. But eventually we put the application in, and that then triggered a discussion with Kerry as part of this process. The application as it stands now is for the hours of 7 to 11, so 7 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. Your officer has mentioned the opening hours of 24 hours. We're not going to be open 24 hours here. We do ask that opening hours be left to planning. It's not the opening of a store is not a licensable activity as such, and so we just ask on the application that the opening hours be left alone, and that we focus on the licensable activity here, which is the sale of alcohol. So we've applied for 7 to 11. And then we've also asked for a seasonal variation around Christmas. Now, obviously, that's entirely up to you as a committee as to whether you allow it. We've asked for 14 days before and 14 days after Christmas Day. I'll just explain the reason for that. And that is that when we get to Christmas time each year, we find ourselves applying for a series of temporary event notices for Sainsbury's stores around the country, because there is a demand from customers to be able to do their shop earlier or later. And so we do, in some stores, open at 6 o'clock in the morning and close at midnight. So we're not saying that we would use all of these days or even the hours. It's to allow the flexibility around Christmas. So it's likely to be only 3 or 4 days that we use. And it's completely open to you as a committee to say, well, look, we're going to refuse that part of the application. You can just apply for temporary event notices as and when you need them. The reason we're doing it is that we found ourselves, and Joe will confirm this, 3 or 4 years ago, we were applying for about 80 tens each year. And you can imagine that in terms of planning and administration for everybody, for all concerned, that was difficult. And so we have tried to amend as many applications, as many licenses as possible, just to give us that flexibility around Christmas. The main focus of today, I would hope, is the 7 to 11 aspect of the application, that we wish to sell alcohol at the store, and we would like the hours to match our opening hours, which will be 7 to 11, save around the Christmas time. So we are slightly outside your core hours and slightly within your core hours, if that makes any sense. So your core hours Monday to Thursday are 8 to 11:30. Now we're not applying to go to 11:30. We're applying for 11. So, but we are applying for 7 between 7 and 8 in the morning. So we're outside of your policy core hours in the morning, but within in the evening. And then Sundays is also a discrepancy in the morning as well. We would ask that you allow those, if you're minded to grant the license, obviously, that we much prefer to be able to open the whole of the store at 7 o'clock in the morning, rather than to have an area shuttered off. And we don't believe that we would be contributing in any way to the community of impact in this particular location if the store were to be open, if the alcohol section were to be open between 7 and 8 in the morning. But again, that's a matter for you as the committee, and you will obviously decide whether there is evidence that we are likely to add significantly to the impact there. The operating schedule that we've included, there are some usual conditions, if you like, about CCTV and about reporting and the training, and Joe can talk to you about the training of our colleagues. We obviously have age verification, it's challenge 25, and we have CCTV throughout the premises. We'll be bringing employment to between 20 and 25 people as part of this store opening. In terms of the community of impact, the conditions that we've included actually tie in with your policy requirements, in that we don't sell single cans. We don't sell the strong beers, ciders, the white ciders, the strong single cans of beer that are known to be attractive to the street drinking community. We won't have any self-service of spirits, and we won't be selling spirit miniatures. Now, I've discussed all this with Kerry, and Kerry will wave or shake her head if she disagrees with anything that I'm going to say. But I think the police are satisfied with the conditions in terms of promoting the licensing objectives. And Kerry will speak to you obviously for herself, but I understand the police position here is not actually so much as opposing the application as acknowledging that we are within the special policy area, and therefore wishing to bring it to you as a committee to make the decision. So the police have brought no evidence today to oppose the application as such. We don't have police witness statements. We don't have any actual evidence to oppose the application, but it is a recognition that we are within the special policy area, and that's always been understood throughout the discussions that we've had with Kerry. And I'm grateful for the time that she spent with us on this application. Now, the policy itself creates a excuse me, a rebuttable presumption that an application likely to add to the existing community of impact will normally be refused or be subject to certain limitations following relevant representations. So I'm asking you not to refuse the application. I'm asking that you grant the application based on specific restrictions, and those are the restrictions that we set out in the operating schedule that are consistent with your special policy and are agreed with the police. I'm not saying the police have agreed the application, I'm saying that the conditions are satisfactory to the police in respect of promoting the licensing objectives. Paragraph 1.21 of your policy says that any representation must refer to the information that was placed before the licensing authority when you developed your cumulative impact policy. And there's lots of information in your policy about the number of off licenses, and there are a number of off licenses in the area. I had the pleasure of walking the streets last week, and you've got photographs. They're my photographs that I took as I was going up the street from. I started opposite where the Sainsbury's was going to be. I walked into the Nisa, and I walked up to the clock tower, and then crossed the road just beyond the clock tower, and then came back down the road to the Sainsbury's location, and I took photographs of each of the licensed premises as I did so. And I would just like to say that licensing isn't about numbers, and it shouldn't be about numbers. And I'm sure that you as a committee would not want to make decision based on the number of licenses. It must be about the quality. You can have 10 really good, well-run stores in an area and not have any problems. You can have 2 or even 1 poorly run store in an area and you get problems. So it must be about promoting the licensing objectives and improving the quality in an area that's important. And in a way, that's how the cumulative impact policy works. It brings the applicant to the table, it focuses attention on the issues in the area, and then a license can be conditioned accordingly. And I know that you as a committee have been very involved in this area. I know that you've recently reviewed a license. I think it was at Hanwell, forgot the name of it. It's just round the corner on Boston Road, where according to the papers, there were sales out of hours and some illicit products in the store as well. So there, as a committee, you dealt with that application and revoked that poorly performing store, and you've revoked the license. You've also dealt with another application recently brought to you for Hanwell Convenience, which was at the clock tower, just next to the clock tower. And you considered the evidence in that case. The police did on that occasion produce witness statements. They opposed the application in a way that they're not opposing today. And the licensing authority also, I think it's Robert Deere, opposed the application by Hanwell Convenience. And the concern there was that the applicant didn't appear to understand the policy or the reasons behind it, and also had a record of trading poorly at another one of his stores, and the application was refused on that basis. So simply because, and interestingly, Ms. Brown didn't, the Hanwell Community Forum didn't oppose that application. I don't know why not, but they didn't on that occasion. So I wouldn't want there to be an argument that, oh, we've refused one 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, therefore we can't grant Sainsbury's. This is, every application, as your policy acknowledges, must be considered on its own merits. And we've demonstrated a full understanding of the policy, the reasons behind it, and we've adapted our application accordingly. And as you would expect, we are a responsible retailer. And again, Kerry has commented that Sainsbury's doesn't present the police with problems elsewhere with our stores. In terms of the representation from the, well, I'm treating it as an individual representation, and your legal advisor or licensing officer will tell me if it's anything other than that, because I've struggled. I have tried to find information about the Hanwell Community Forum. I've not been able to actually find any information about it online. I've read the cases that have been involved in. They've been involved in various judicial reviews through Ms. Brown of different planning applications in the area. But in terms of this particular representation, Ms. Brown has questioned why the display of the notice was only for 28 days, and that in her view, because of COVID, the statutory period for representation should have been increased to 42 days. That's the first time I've heard that argument. There has been no amendment to this part of the Licensing Act or its regulations as a result of COVID. Believe you me, we've had plenty of regulations over the last few months, but extending the representation period for applications has not been one of them. So I don't understand the argument for there being an extension to any statutory deadline as a result of COVID. As Brown refers to challenges to the police at the clock tower, well, there's no evidence from the police today on that. I'm sure that Kerry will talk to you about issues that there are at the clock tower, but that would be for the police to make their own case and to bring their own evidence. Ms. Brown refers to there being residents all around the store. Well, yes, there are residents who live behind. There's a terrace of housing behind, and we are in a town centre, but there is not a single resident representation before you today, and there hasn't been throughout this process. Other than Ms. Brown, who's made her own representation. Ms. Brown has referenced various other organisations, including, I mean, there do seem to be quite a lot of local organisations, which is great in Hanwell, really. I mean, there's the Old Hanwell Residents Association, the Hanwell Village Green, CARA, CARA, Save Our Streets, Make Hanwell Safe. There are lots of organisations, which is fantastic. It's really community spirited, but there are no representations from any of those organisations today. And I don't think you can take Carolyn Brown's representation as being a representation on behalf of any of those organisations. They all had the opportunity to make a representation before you. There is reference in your policy, and I think it's in Ms. Brown's email representation as well, about studies which show that off licenses, the number of off licenses are a factor in street drinking. I've been around the block a number of times on applications for off licenses, and we sometimes hear this, that there are studies that support this argument. The only studies I've seen, and it's they're very old, they're certainly several years old now. I think there's a study in Canada, there's a study in Australia, and a study in America, but they are very specific. They're not just about off licenses, and it would be completely wrong to extract any findings from those studies to the particular circumstances of the UK or even Hanwell. So I've not seen any studies, and certainly none produced to you today, which says that the number of off licenses in the area is what creates street drinking. It's not. Our experience is, sorry, that's my cat. Right. I do apologise. I have to have a water spray handy. It is not the number of off licenses that it results in street drinking. It's the way that particular off licenses are run. And I'm not here to criticise others, and everybody needs to make a trade. But I would ask you to walk through the photographs that I've presented. I don't know whether you've got those handy. I managed to print mine out, but the Nisa Local is, I would say, the only comparable store in terms of alcohol and the way that we will be trading to the Sainsbury's. It's a good store. It's got a good range of convenience alcohol. The next one is a Pograbok, which I probably pronounced that wrongly, but it's a Polish and Lithuanian, Russian and Ukrainian delicatessen. They are selling things that we will not be selling, and that includes their range of alcohol. So very, very different range of alcohol. Then we get to the Clock Tower. Then there's a Sunrise supermarket, so that's specialising in Asian, African, European goods. Again, it's nothing like a Sainsbury's store there. We've got the Lucky Mart liquor specialist. Again, that seems to be Polish, but I would ask you to look at the window display and decide for yourselves whether that is what you want to see in your area in terms of where there is a street drinking issue, whether that's the sort of display that you want to see in your area. And I'll leave it there. There's Lidl. and they obviously have a different sort of operation to Sainsbury's. They do have a license from 7 o'clock in the morning until until midnight. So we're not introducing new licensed hours to the area. Lidl have already got that. Then we've got the off-license best, and again, I would ask you to look at the display, the way that alcohol is promoted in that particular store, very different to the way that Sainsbury's would be operating. And then Hanwell News. This is one that really jumped out at me. I think they've dropped the news. If you see the photograph, the whole of the window display is dedicated to alcohol, and then the door was open when I was there. And if you look at the photograph through the door, you can see there their focus on single cans. This is all single cans, and again, we're not doing any of, well, those product lines will not form part of the Sainsbury's offer, and we certainly wouldn't be offering the single cans in the way that in the way that they are doing. And then there's another Polish delicatessen, and then there's the Price Cutter, which is the store which is the subject of the review. That's on Boston Road. So it's not as simple as looking at the license. Now, of course, interesting. The problems that we're told about in terms of the street drinking, I'm speaking to Kerry, is up at the clock tower. That's where there are congregations, and that's one of the reasons you refused the application for the store right next to the clock tower. But in order to come down to the Sainsbury's, those individuals would be walking past all of these stores that I've just shown you, which are selling, a number of them are selling high strength beers, ciders, and in the single cans, and so they're most unlikely to be attracted by the Sainsbury's range. They know that they will be challenged in Sainsbury's, and that's part of the training that our colleagues have. We did attempt to consult and to have a dialogue with Ms. Brown. You've seen the correspondence. It didn't go terribly well, and so I backed away and decided that having discussed with our client, we decided that we should bring this to committee and for you to decide the application. So that's really it from me. I'm very happy to answer any questions, as are Joe and Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You don't have witnesses as such, I take it?
Not witnesses as such, but as I said, they're both available to answer questions if you have them.
Yeah, you may answer. You will answer collectively, perhaps, rather than simply individually. I understand that. So, if I can move to questions from responsible authorities from the police. PC Smart.
No, Chair, there's no questions. Thank you.
No questions. Questions from objectors. Carolyn.
Yes, in your walk up and down the high street, Mr. Bokai, did you actually go as far as number 65, the Broadway?
Sorry, why am I still on? I stuck to Uxbridge Road, other than going down Boston Road. I'm not saying that these are the only off licenses in the area. I walked up and down Uxbridge Road. Mm-hmm.
Well, 65 Broadway is actually on Uxbridge Road, and it is in fact the hostel for people with drinking and drug dependencies, and it's actually very close to Hanwell Town Centre. It's considered to be in Hanwell Town Centre, and I just wonder if you feel that an additional outlet selling alcohol is just what we need when we already have a lot of people who are vulnerable and who really should not be finding it easier to buy alcohol at all hours of the day and most of the hours of the night.
Right, if I can answer your question, I was looking at the off licenses in the area, so I didn't go around looking at hostels. And most town centres, most areas do have, sadly, hostels of this nature, and that's not a reason in itself to refuse an application for a good operator in the area. So my own view is that the focus should be on the on what is attractive to these individuals, what is causing the problem, as opposed to stopping a good operator coming into the area. One of the dangers of community impact policies, and Joanna and I have seen this in practice, is where it's treated as an iron curtain. And I don't think it is here, but we have seen it elsewhere. If you treat the community impact policy as simply a policy to stop new entrants coming into the market, it creates complacency amongst the existing operators and certainly doesn't promote the licensing objective. So the policy is there to ensure that high standards are adhered to.
Thank you. Karen, any more questions?
No, nothing that I can't clarify when I speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving to panel members. Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, I'm here, but it takes me some moments to unmute my phone. Have you got me?
I did call you, yes. Any questions?
Yeah,
for Mr. Botkai?
No questions at this point. I'll make. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Botkai, you didn't perhaps realise that we didn't have any of the photographs you referred to.
Oh no, I didn't. Sorry,
maybe another time we could have this in advance, so we know what you're talking about.
I did submit those, and my understanding was that they would be circulated before the hearing, so they were submitted.
I apologise, Chair. I didn't get any photographs. I don't know whether you did. So anyway,
well, there were some photographs
in the area, but I couldn't follow Mr. Botkai's evidence, so that it's all right. Point made.
There were some photographs in the pack. I don't know if they were the photographs to which you were referring, but as Councillor Sumner says, the panel is over a period of years familiar with the area, particularly with the special areas, because obviously these are matters which come before. These are matters the panel has to focus on quite often, Mr. Botkai, I'm sure you can understand.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, yeah.
I think we were familiar with the and some of the premises you mentioned, the panel's very familiar with, if I can put it that way.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah. Any other points,
Steve,
Councillor Sumner?
Steve, can I?
No, I'll finish for Councillor Sumner if I can first, Anthony.
Later. Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Yes, sorry, I've got to speed. I am very familiar with all of these locations. In fact, I will be driving past here in around sort of 2:45 today. And as I was speaking at the pre-deliberations, I went to St Joseph's School, and there were street drinkers over 30 years ago, in fact 40 years ago, in the clock tower. It's Hanwell Broadway area, and that's what it is. It's not Elthorn, it's Hanwell Broadway. It has been blighted by street drinking over the years. But my question is, how do you, I see your operating schedule, but can you confirm to me how you will meet the challenge of being open at 7 o'clock when many other retailers are not? I don't think, whilst Lidl's is open, they don't sort of sell cold cans of beer. How would you meet the challenge of the street drinkers trying to purchase?
Okay, well, I'll start, and then Joanna will come in if I miss anything. We won't be selling cold cans of beer, so nobody will be able to come in and buy a single can of beer at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we know that that's what the street drinking community is looking for.
Sorry, can I just, what about 4 cans of cold beer?
Well, they would have to then come to the till. I mean, we work with the police, and if there are known street drinkers and we know about them, then they can be refused. We have also in other locations had banning orders when working with the police. So we don't believe that they will be attracted to our store anyway, because we're not selling what they want, and that it will form part of the colleague training to be alert and to refuse sales. Now, obviously, if somebody comes in and well presented and they're sober and they want to buy 4 cans of beer, then unless we know that this particular person is causing a problem in the area, then that sale will be made. So it is a matter of working with the police, and we've done that elsewhere. Joe, do you want to come in? Is there anything that you wish to add there in terms of the experience?
Yes, well, as Robert has already mentioned, we do have training for colleagues, and there is a section on street drinking and looking out for the signs of drunkenness. This part of the training package was actually helped to be put together by Richmond Police, and as you can imagine, we're situated in high streets up and down the country, so we are very used to dealing with this issue, and the majority of our estate do open at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just got a couple of points. I suppose clearly you've demonstrated, you've made yourself very familiar with our licensing policy. So I think you identify there is effectively 2 hurdles here. The first is whether the existence of a new outlet at all adversely impacts the cumulative impact to the point that the panel should think it should not happen. And the other is, should the panel take the view that the area could accommodate a further outlet without undue or adverse impact on cumulative impact? Whether and why a variation from the hours that have been laid out should be countenanced. So I think I've understood your points about the first hurdle.
Yeah.
I'm a little less clear about the second, as to why, in the context of such a local store, because we're not talking about one of your big supermarkets, and clearly you're a company with a vast range of scale in how you trade, particularly over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. So I think I'm a little uncertain to this point as to why, for you, Sainsbury's, for a local store, the sale of alcohol prior to 8 AM would be of any significance to your trading, given that, unlike some of the other shops that you've spotted on the Broadway, and apologies for the fact the Uxbridge Road very annoyingly rebrands itself on regular occasions in West London, so it is confusing if you're not from the area. Unlike these other shops whose primary business model is the sale of alcohol, you're a general grocers, albeit on a mega scale. So why before 8? And then the other point I want to come to is this Christmas issue, which I think is connected, because again, I see a difference between, let's say, somebody thinking I'm going to get Christmas over and done with, taking the car down to the car park at Chiswick the Chiswick Sainsbury's first thing in the morning to beat the rush in order to load up with the entire festive season's worth of food and drink, and what someone might want to do for a local high street shop where residents will tell you for other reasons, parking and through flow of traffic is problematic at the best of times. So I'm struggling to see the benefit for this shop of that facility.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I can leave you with those.
Absolutely understood. I mean, the test is best set out, I think, in paragraph 2.14, which you're obviously familiar with, that you'll always consider individual merits of the application, where licenses are unlikely to add significantly to the cumulative impact. The license will be granted. So the question is whether we will add significantly. Now, the 7 o'clock to 8 a.m., you're absolutely right. It's not going to make much difference to us in terms of sales. We're not terribly interested in selling alcohol between 7 and 8 in the morning. The reason we applied for that is to allow the store to open. So the only issue for us is that the store will be open at 7 because we have to service our customers. They expect us to be open at 7. So we would have to then shutter off the alcohol section and open that at 8 a.m. So we'd prefer not to, but we are comfortable if you are minded to grant the license from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11. Then we're perfectly comfortable with that if you feel that would address the concern in the policy. And as for the Christmas,
just on that one, can they not? I mean, there are shops where, for example, the till wouldn't scan certain items prior to 8 a.m. So
absolutely.
rather than shuttering,
the tills will be restricted. They're restricted in all of our stores to the relevant licensing hours.
Thank you.
The tills wouldn't be the problem, and we're not saying it's a major issue. It's our preference. I hope that my tone is clear in that it's our preference to have the 7 a.m. But if the committee feels that 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Would present a risk in terms of the cumulative impact, then we would perfectly understand, and we're comfortable with the 8 a.m. Start, and we would screen off the alcohol section between 7 and 8. But we'd ask that apply on the Sunday as well. So 8 a.m. on the Sunday, we wouldn't want it to go to 11 o'clock, for example, on a Sunday morning. So we would ask that it be 8 to 11, 7 days a week. And again, with the Christmas hours, it's because of our experience of customer behaviour in other locations and over the years. But again, if the committee is more comfortable, we can drop the seasonal aspect of it, and we will apply for 10s if the store wishes to extend its hours over Christmas. I understand the picture you're portraying, but actually customers do behave differently around Christmas, and obviously this year particularly we've had the issue where customers want space. They don't want to be in a crowded environment, and we are finding that they want to shop earlier for obvious reasons, to have more room, and that's simply the way that we've found that customers do. We wouldn't be extending those hours at Christmas if there wasn't a customer demand. So there is a customer demand. Whether there is here, we don't know yet. So again, that's entirely with you. If you decide to refuse the seasonal aspect, then we would look at that annually based on and use the 10s process. The police obviously can object to those if the police are not comfortable with them.
Thank you very much. Well, if there are no further questions for Mr. Bokhai and his team, I'll move on to the representations from other parties, starting with the police. PC Smart.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Chair. So as we know, that the application is for a new premises licence at 144 to 156 Uxbridge Road. It's already been mentioned where the location of it is. There is a problem around there with street drinkers, but obviously that's work in progress. The effect of adopting a special policy area is to create a rebuttable presumption that applications for the grant of a variation of premises licences or club premises certificates, which are likely to add to the existing cumulative impact, will normally be refused or subject to certain limitations. Following relevant representations, unless the applicant can demonstrate in the operating schedule that there will be no negative cumulative impact on one or more of the licensing objectives, and also the applicant should give consideration to the potential cumulative impact issues when setting out the steps they will take to promote the licensing objectives in their application. Now, yes, there is a problem with around street drinkers in Hanwell, and it's been like that for many years. However, the Sainsbury's aren't going to be doing single cans. They're not going to be doing high strength, which obviously attracts the street drinkers. They obviously changed from the original application, the hours have been amended to 7 till 11. And also we've heard about the seasonal variation. Sainsbury's don't generally cause the police any problems in relation to street drinkers. The conditions proposed within the operating schedule are proportionate for the licensing objectives to be promoted. But as I've said in my representation, due to the special policy area and the hours being slightly out of core hours, obviously we're not in agreement with the application, and the representation has been submitted. So yes, it is within the special policy area, but the police believe that because of obviously there's not going to be any high strength single cans, it's not going to attract the street drinkers to Sainsbury's. So our objections are that obviously due to the special policy area and the core hours.
Thank you very much. Questions for PC Smart, Mr. Bokhai?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the panel, Councillor Sumner?
Chair, thank you. I presume the police would be happy if there was some way that the tills were dealt with. So I'm not familiar with how you refer to this, Sainsbury's, but presumably there is some way you can prove to the police that the tills won't be accepting alcohol before.
Yes, the tills are restricted centrally on all our tills with a license within the licensing hours.
Okay, so the police would be happy, I presume, then, if it was an 8 o'clock till opening for alcohol, then that's fine. Yes,
that's correct. Yes.
Thank you, Kay. No further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
I'm okay, thank you. I've got some clarity there, thank you.
Thank you. And just following up from Councillor Sumner's question, I mean, in terms of so I'm not seeking to say that Mr. Bokhai has automatically surrendered on these points, but he made reference to an 8 o'clock start being acceptable if need be, and also to the 6 a.m. seasonal variation. Would the removal of that make any substantive difference to the police's view of the application?
Obviously, we welcome the reduction to 8 o'clock. That's fine. And in relation to the seasonal variation, the police don't really have an objection to that submitted on the licence, because like it's just seasonal. But obviously, if the committee are not minded to grant that, then obviously the 10s are there in its place.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on then, Carolyn Brown, can I ask you to give your evidence, please?
Do I get to ask a question of the police?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Don't understand why, but never mind. Okay, just to clarify, because there seemed to be some question about what Hanwell Community Forum does. We do look at a lot of local planning applications, but we did campaign with Transport for All in order to be able to get a lift at Hanwell Crossrail Station. We do also look at parks and green spaces, and we are also working to look at the council's review of their conservation area strategy. We look at all sorts of things that are relevant to Hanwell, not just planning applications. But just as an observation, it does seem unlikely that this year's COVID Christmas is going to be relevant to Sainsbury's at the site in Hanwell, because unless you're moving into a building site, you're not going to be open by Christmas, and we're all going to be vaccinated by next year. So the I would say that the seasonal variation is something that it's very relevant to make sure that you don't get 2 weeks worth on either side of Christmas of an option to be open longer hours. That's all. So Hanwell Community Forum is a constituted community organisation allying several residents' associations and businesses across Hanwell. Hanwell comprises predominantly of Elthorne and Hebane wards and has a population around 24,000. Our email address list, as I said, is over 1,300 named residents. So we're not a small organisation, however much, you know, you may feel that you would be better off undermining us. Sainsbury's licence was on the agenda for last night's virtual public meeting, and there was very much discussion. Absolutely no support for it. We had 29 attendees and no one had seen the licence application advertised outside of notifications received from myself when I sent out the agenda from the meeting. Sainsbury's appears to have undertaken the minimal statutory requirement in terms of publicity, and that's recognised to be outdated given now that the print version of Ealing Gazette is difficult to get hold of and has very low readership. And you'd have to know you needed to look for the add-on online. Displaying of the A4 poster on the hoarding is laughable, really. Very few people walk past that narrow paving on that side of the road, especially in front of the development site, which is what it is at the moment, the building site.
Miss Brown, it's the legal advisor here. Can I just stop you a moment? Sorry, there isn't a hand function, so I didn't know how to raise my hand on this. Chair, may I just ask for clarification on one matter, please?
Yes, certainly.
I heard Miss Brown say that it was only last night's agenda that this application was heard at the forum. Can she just confirm that is in case what she is indeed what she said?
That is indeed what I said.
Thank you, Miss Brown. I do apologise for interrupting.
Yeah, it was a very long subject. We went through it in great detail, and we had a lot of people absolutely astounded. And I think one of the things that seems to be just being ignored at the moment is the core hours do in fact mean that there's much fewer hours on Sunday, and they are modified for Friday to Saturday and bank holidays, Sundays as well. So that seems to be just being ignored completely at the moment. It'd be quite nice if I could finish my representation, Mr. Bokhai, before we go any further. So sorry to interrupt at that point. So let's see. On behalf of Hanwell Community Forum, I object strongly to the application for extensive alcohol off sales by Sainsbury's at this sensitive central Hanwell site. Before I get into the nature of our objections, aligned to the special policy area, Elthorne, I would request clarification of the deadline. Just to clarify on the deadline, again, it's kind of disparaged again, but we have, the Ealing Council does have its right to modify the deadlines for things. And in fact, on the planning side of things, planning applications have had a 42-day deadline. And I am surprised really that the same extended deadline through the COVID and all the lockdowns and everything has not applied also to the alcohol licensing, because the same principles apply. Trying to communicate with people when you know, we're under all this additional stress and regulation is something that I'm very surprised that there wasn't an extended consultation. And by definition, there would have been objections from Old Hanwell Residents Association, from Hanwell Village Green Residents Association, both of whose chairs were on the call last night. So, you know, believe me, there are plenty of people in Hanwell who are really pretty annoyed about this. So the application site is in Hanwell Town Centre. It's far from being at a great distance from the clock tower. It's diagonally opposite the sensitive clock tower area, where there have been sustained, regularly reported antisocial behaviour due to alcohol, which the police do find it challenging to address. This area and issue has been set as a priority for the Elthorne Safer Neighbourhood team to address every quarter for the last 10 years or more. And I do chair the local Elthorne Safer Neighbourhood team consultation panel. I did ask the Safer Neighbourhood team to come along, but they assured me that they had spoken to the licensing team, and the licensing team were very aware of how difficult and sustained a problem it is to manage this antisocial behaviour associated with alcohol around the clock tower and around our green spaces as well, which, you know, again, we've got lovely green space just down the road from the Sainsbury's site at Brent Meadow and along the river at that point. The application site is surrounded by family-focused residential housing in George Street, Old Hamwell and the Lawns area. And in fact, the building itself will have 36 housing units on the 5 floors above retail on the ground floor. And there are 7 family townhouses being built by the same developer adjacent in Westminster Road. The addition of this new licensed premises would be likely to have an adverse impact on the peace and quiet of local residents. In addition, there's a potential for contamination of the street environment through increased litter and other pollution of the streets by customers. Hamwell Community Forum, Old Hamwell Residents Association, Hamwell Village Green Cara and Save Our Streets, Make Hamwell Safe, have all campaigned strongly to try and contain the number of outlets that are given licenses to sell alcohol. I'm afraid I can't account, other than for the lack of advertising and promotion, why the other organisations have not submitted a representation. Addressing Ealing's licensing policy, Elthorne is joint 5th of the top 7 out of 24 areas in the borough with the most off licenses. Elthorne also has the 5th highest concentration of off licenses, and do we seriously need another one of any description anyway? In line with paragraph 1.35 of the policy, local community members believe that Hamwell Town Centre is being disproportionately affected by criminality, nuisance and alcohol-rated London Ambulance Service call-outs compared to other parts of the borough. Old Hamwell and the Lawns residential areas are predominantly family-focused. It's entirely inappropriate for yet another off-sales licence to be provided in the town centre. In line with paragraph 1.38, studies have shown that the number of off licenses in the area is a factor in the prevalence of street drinking. Local data shows that there are incidences of alcohol-related crime and antisocial behaviour occurring in parks and open spaces in the borough in close proximity to off-licence premises. And that's indeed the case in Hamwell Town Centre. We have problems at Conley Dell, which is at the end of Station Road, which I think Sainsbury's would probably be the closest off licence to that. There's sustained issue about street drinking around the clock tower, as we've talked about, close to the application site. And the same goes for Conley Dell and prevalence there. Paragraph 1.40 shows that Hamwell is the 4th higher where street drinking related incidents in parks and open spaces is most prevalent. And that's behind Southall, Greenford and West Ealing, but ahead of Acton. And from paragraph 1.45, when mapping the crime data across the borough, the greatest prevalence of alcohol-related offences takes place within Ealing, Acton, Southall, special policy areas established previously, and most prominently in Southall and Ealing, although additional areas of prevalence can be seen in Walpole, Elthorne, and Lady Margaret. We did campaign very hard for the for Hamwell to become a cumulative impact area, but there was a lot of resistance to it, but we have finally managed to be included in the special policy area. And I would hope that special policy area has some kind of power to make a difference here, rather than just to allow Sainsbury's the privilege that they appear to think they are entitled to. From paragraph 1.46, 2018-2019 London ambulance data shows a total of 2,641 ambulance vehicle attendances for alcohol-related incidences. When considering the concentration of attendances, 6 areas, including Elthorne Hamwell, had more than 250 per square kilometre, and we're 3rd on that list there. There was a weekend during 2019 when the same ambulance crew was called out 4 times to antisocial behaviour at the clock. This pavement area is the main access point for families walking from the lawns to the high street, for buses to central Ealing and to local shops and restaurants. It's frankly embarrassing to residents for there to be so much street drinking going on, encouraged and facilitated by the borough's approval of excessive numbers of off-sales licences. And the clock is very, very close to Sainsbury's site, and that really should be noted. From paragraph 1.47, a comprehensive review of all relevant available data sets relating to the greatest concentration of alcohol-related crime, antisocial behaviour, public nuisance, public safety and well-being suggests a concentration of issues in the following areas. And Elthorne is 4th on the list of areas, behind Ealing, Acton and Southall there and ahead of Greenford. And according to 2.86, applications within the special policy areas established in this policy falling within Ealing, Acton, Southall, Greenford and Elthorne must demonstrate they're not likely to add negative cumulative impact. And I haven't heard anything this morning that says that Sainsbury's being open the hours that they're proposing would not be adding to that negative cumulative impact. This applicant has made no effort whatsoever to comply with this clause in policy, and we strongly believe that we do not need any more licensed premises in the town centre, and that approval of this application could only add to the negative cumulative impact. We had the street pastors on the call last night, and they were adamant that we did not need another outlet at all. Should the licensing team choose to go against the community's wishes, clause 2.87 says, in terms of the impact of a special policy, specifically on applications for off sales, the certain limitations referred to in 1.21 may include, but are not limited to, either of a combination of the following: restrictions around single unit sales, potential additional restrictions around terminal hours, restrictions around sales of alcoholic miniatures, and restrictions around sales of certain forms of high strength alcohol. Sainsbury's, under pressure, it would appear, and after discussion with the police, has decided to comply with this, but there is still a problem with respect to the hours being requested outside the core hours, when the core hours already are too long. Hamwell Community Forum would request that all of these restrictions be implemented should the licence be granted. Where representations are received against the grant for a further licence for off sales because of serious concerns over problems of outdoor drinking and or late night disorder associated with off sales of alcohol in the area, the licensing authority will give careful consideration to restricting the number and hours of premises selling alcohol for consumption off the premises. This is to hinder problematic outdoor drinkers masking their consumption by purchasing from a series of premises and using a number of premises to buy alcohol if they're refused in one. We would request that the application is refused outright, but if Ealing favours the applicant over the community, then we request that the hours of trading alcohol are severely restricted. With respect to the protection of children from harm, this application site is on the safe walk to school routes for 3 primary schools. That's St Joseph's Roman Catholic Primary School, St Mark's Primary School and Oaklands Primary School. High school students from Elthorne Park High School and Drayton Manor High School use the bus stops in close proximity to this application site. Our students and school children are already subjected to an inordinate number of alcohol sales outlets and antisocial street drinkers. Please do not add it to the list. We believe that the granting of this application would negatively impact on all 4 of the licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, the promotion of public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Please refuse the application, or at the very least severely constrain the hours of alcohol sales. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just say the panel had seen and read your submission prior to you prior to the hearing today as well. Questions to Carolyn, Mr. Botka?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Councillor Sumner?
No, thank you.
Right, and I have no questions. So thank you very much, Carolyn, for your evidence. So that takes us to, I think my role now is to confirm any conditions offered or agreed during discussions, which I think I can summarise. I hope I won't put words in everybody's mouth at this stage, that the applicant, through Mr. Bock, confirmed that if the panel felt it necessary, that opening hours of 8 AM but at 7 days a week would be acceptable to them. And if the panel felt it necessary, the applicant would be prepared to drop or do without the licensed seasonal variation. Would that be a fair reflection, Mr. Botka, of what you believe, we've agreed?
There's a semantic difference, Councillor, in the opening hours. It's the alcohol hours. So
the alcohol, yeah, that's an important difference on alcohol. And even important when I say agreed, I mean merely that we haven't agreed them. You put forward as something which you would not find unacceptable if the panel required them.
That's right. In terms of the, sorry, you're breaking up there, Councillor, but in terms of the licensable hours of 8 AM to 11 PM and dropping the seasonal hours, if you felt there was evidence that you've heard today to support that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies if my connection is scrambling a bit. So now I move to the summings up. If I can ask people briefly to sum up. PC Smart, do you wish to say anything in summing up?
Thank you, Chair. Just in summing up, I'd just like to, Carolyn Brown said that there was an issue with the street drinking. I said that when I spoke originally. Yes, there is a problem with street drinking and antisocial behaviour in the area. However, the conditions that Sainsbury's have put forward in the operating schedule, they wouldn't attract the street drinkers because it's, you know, high strength beer, no single cans. So I'd just like to clarify that we believe that the street drinkers wouldn't be attracted to such premise. But as I said in my representation, that obviously our issues, our concerns are the special policy area, and obviously the hours are just slightly outside core hours.
Thank you. And Carolyn Brown, if you wish to briefly sum up.
I'm still astonished that we're talking about 365 days a year here. Absolutely astonished, and really do not see why Sainsbury's should be given the benefit of outside the core hours, bearing in mind that Hamwell has campaigned for I don't know how long to try and get cumulative impact protection, and quite clearly the spellers, if they get 8 until 11, 365 days a year, then I have to say, you know, the special policy is not worth the paper it's written on. Really, that's we absolutely do not want that, and you know, there's not much more I can say really.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Botka, to sum up quickly on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. We have one resident objecting to this application today. With respect, and I tried to I tried to make this point during submissions, but I couldn't get in. If this matter was only considered by the forum last night, I would question what authority Carolyn Brown has been making representations on behalf of the forum without consulting its members, and B, corresponding with me. I was alerted to this by the speed at which Ms. Brown responded to my emails, and also the language used in those emails. And it was at that point I did ask your licensing officer, because I didn't want to antagonize anybody, but I did ask your licensing officer to come back to try and establish what the forum is, what authority there is to make these representations. But it's quite clear that the forum was not properly consulted, and so you can only take this representation in my submission as being the representation of a single person. That's not to disparage the representation as did it, but it is there. It is one person's representation, and it doesn't represent 1,300 people, and it doesn't represent the other forums or businesses or societies that there may be in the area. They all had the opportunity to make a representation. There was plenty of time. There was a 28-day consultation period. If Ms. Brown had wanted to alert members and others to the application, she had that 28-day period to let them know, so that they could put the representations in off their own bat, and they didn't do so. So that's the legal point, if you like. Ms. Brown said that she's not heard anything today to support the view that we won't be adding to the cumulative impact. Well, you've heard from your experts on street drinking, your expert on crime and disorder, and that's the police licensing officer, who is saying quite clearly to you that the Sainsbury's is unlikely to add to the cumulative impact of street drinking, because we're not going to be attracting the street drinkers to our store. So it's completely wrong to say that nothing has been heard today. And she's also wrong to say that we have made no effort to comply with the policy. We have made an effort. We have prepared an operating schedule with two eyes on your policy requirements, and that's been acknowledged by the police. Ms. Brown also seems to suggest that we had only agreed those conditions following pressure from the police. That's entirely incorrect. What has happened here, and I did say this in my opening, is that we drafted an operating schedule and we were trying to make contact with the police, but there seemed to be a problem with the inbox, the email box, and so several emails went unanswered. And at that point, we acknowledged that the police have got other things to do than to deal with our applications. At that point, we decided, let's put the application in, and then we can talk to the police during the representation period. So those conditions were not imposed on us, or there was no pressure. We put those conditions in ourselves, and the police are satisfied with those conditions, so they didn't require anything further from us. So licensing, as I say, is not about numbers. So I've not seen these studies which show a clear link between numbers of off licenses and street drinking. So I'd be very cautious about accepting that statement without actually seeing these studies. It must be about the way in which off licenses are run, the way in which alcohol is displayed, and the type of alcohol that's on offer. And I'm sorry that you haven't seen the photographs. They were submitted. I'm sure that they would be made available to you if you wish, but they are showing you what you probably know, and that certainly the stores that are there, well, some of them are blatant. They are displaying alcohol from right throughout the shop window. It's all about alcohol. It's all about single bottles. It's all about the types of drinks which are attracting the street drinking community, and those are the issues that should be addressed and are being addressed by the committee, as demonstrated by the review of the convenience store already. And I would suggest that the local forums would be well advised to focus on where the issues are coming from, rather than to stop a really good operator coming into the area. So in terms of this application, I hope that you will welcome Sainsbury's to the area, and I would suggest that the lack of representations to this application suggests that the vast majority of the community will welcome Sainsbury's to the area. We believe that we've satisfied the test that we will not be adding significantly to the cumulative impact, and you've heard from the police, your expert, on that. And so we'd ask you to grant the licence as applied for, but we have expressed our view that if you feel, notwithstanding what the police are saying, if you feel that the 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is likely to add to the cumulative impact, then obviously it's there for you to decline that part of the application. And the same with the seasonal hours. We don't believe that that will have any impact on the cumulative impact at all. We'd like to have the seasonal hours, but again, we're fairly relaxed if you feel that there is evidence to support a refusal of that part of the application. So very happy to answer any further questions that you have. I'm grateful for the time that you've given us. And if you have any other conditions, there was other one. One of the council, I think it was Councillor Kelly, was asking you about a condition on tills. We don't generally have a condition about the hours. I mean, that's how the company works, and we're happy for that to be minuted. So where there are specific alcohol hours at a Sainsbury's store, then the tills are set to reflect those hours. I'd need a little bit of time to actually draft a condition if you felt it appropriate. I don't think we've got that condition on any other license, and I don't think it's really necessary or proportionate. I think you can take it from Sainsbury's that is how the company operates. So if there are any conditions that you've got in mind, other than those that have been agreed with the police and put to you today, I'd be grateful for the opportunity to readdress you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't believe there'll be a need for such a conversation at this point. I think the panel now will retire together with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. I'm trying to remember, do we have a provisional time for us to deliver the decision?
Councillor Donnelly, I would like a right to reply at this point, because there was an astonishing attack by Sainsbury's.
Well, I'm afraid, Carolyn, the proceedings are now over. You've given your right of reply at the point that you made it.
No, you can't have a right of reply before someone's made a personal attack.
Well, I understand how you feel about it.
I wanted to clarify something.
We're going to proceed. We take it on board, the point. We'll take legal advice. We'll take appropriate advice about the status of your representation, and we will. But
in which case, I really do need to clarify.
I'm not
we
prepared.
did not know about the license when our last meeting was held, and I need to say that, because that's why it wasn't discussed until last night.
You've made your point, and we will reflect appropriately. Now back to my previous question, Chair, Misha. Do we have a provisional time?
Chair, I might be able to help on that.
No,
Chair,
Anthony, I don't. On the time
about when we
when we reconvene.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, sir.
Yeah,
is that okay? Yeah, thank you.
Well, yes,
thank you. We normally give a provisional time. I would suggest 12:30, and then just make the point we reserve the right to take longer. Thank you.
No, I understand that. I was just asking Misha really what the provisional time we've indicated, if there's a provisional time we've indicated up to this point.
Chair, no, there's no provisional time for the for 2 hours.
Okay, well, let us say a provisional 12:30, but what we can do is we can email contact parties if we believe that it's going to be significantly beyond that point. Okay?
Can I just say, do we dial back in on what we've used to get back in here, or is there a different ID number?
Misha, it's the same number, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the same link.
It's the same link, yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Obviously, if you'd rather not dial in, then we can arrange for the notification to be sent to you by other means.
No, that's fine, I'll dial in, that's fine. I just didn't know if there was another ID and password for the decision, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation today. And the panel will now with